This is a video record of our 2-week 2018 cruise to Hawaii and back on the Star Princess. Our itinerary took us from Los Angeles across the ocean to Hilo on the big island of Hawaii, then to Honolulu, Oahu, then to Kauai, then to Maui, then across the ocean to Ensenada, Mexico, ending back in LA. On January 3rd, Robin and I woke up bright and early and finished packing in preparation to catch the super shuttle due to arrive at our house at 10:50 that morning. But this trip almost ended before it started because of a problem with oversleeping. With a great deal of rushing and angst, the 5 of us were just barely able to catch the super shuttle we had reserved to take us to the ship. We arrived at the World Cruise Center in San Pedro about 12:30. After checking in and getting our room keys, we boarded the Star Princess around 1 o'clock. We had booked 2 cabins, both on Deck 12, the Aloha deck. Robin and I had cabin A622. Clark, Karen, and Lex had a cabin just down the hall from us in A720. Our cabin had a balcony and a queen-size bed. Their cabin had 2 twin beds and 2 pull-down beds above the twins. Lex wanted and got one of the pull-down beds. After getting lunch, we did a tour of the boat to get oriented. This is called the Vista Lounge. It was where they held most of the trivia games we attended. This is the Horizon Court, the buffet restaurant where we had most of our meals. The Explorer Lounge presented some of the smaller shows on the ship. The piazza was in the center of the ship. It was in 3 levels and contained the shops and some of the restaurants. The Princess Theater held the main shows and the movies. The Neptune's Reef Pool was the outdoor pool, and next to that was the covered Calypso Reef Pool. At the back of the ship was the smaller terrace pool. The terrace pool area was the place to be when the ship backed out of her berth, an event that Lex really wanted to see. But sometimes a guy gets distracted as he waits for things to happen. At about 4 o'clock that afternoon, the ship sounded its horn and we started backing out of our berth. Lex got excited as the ship started to move. There were so many things to see and take in. We passed by the USS Iowa, a World War II battleship that is now permanently docked in the harbor as a tourist attraction. It was at this point that Robin realized that she had left the charger for her camera battery at home. This meant that she could run out of charge before the end of the trip, but thanks to selective picture taking, this did not happen. After we had cleared the harbor and were heading out to sea, Robin and I returned to our cabin. My luggage had been delivered, but not Robin's. After dinner, we returned to our cabin, but her luggage was still missing. Eventually, her luggage was delivered, but it caused a lot of unnecessary worrying on Robin's part. Exhausted, we all turned in just after sunset, but around 11 o'clock that night, we were awoken twice by an announcement over the public address system. The captain was looking for anyone on the ship that had a specific blood type for one of our fellow passengers. Sometime later, we heard a helicopter approaching the ship. The sick or injured passenger and his party were being transported back to Los Angeles. The next day was January 4th. After breakfast, Robin and I took Lex to the child play area called Camp Discovery. We wanted to give Clark and Karen some time to themselves. Wow, look at that. Taller and taller and taller. Mimi.
I think that's amazing. You're doing such a good job. Oh!
Okay, go ahead. Okay, got it? Very good. It's really high. Wow, look at that. Okay, we'll get the other one now.
Yeah.
Lex liked playing in Camp Discovery so much that we took him back there after dinner that night.
Oh no. Need a tutor. Whoa! How fun! Wow! I don't know. What is that? I got a tower? Good job. Uh-oh. Can you fix it? Oh no.
Falling apart. What are we gonna
We've got to fix it.
The next day, January 5th, was Karen's 36th birthday. She woke up and said that she was not feeling well, so Robin and I took Lex again for part of the day. That night, Karen was feeling a little bit better, so we took the kids to the ship's steakhouse, the Crown Grill, for a birthday dinner. At first, everything went very well. The food was great, as was the service. But during the meal, Lex started nodding off. The waiter saw poor Karen trying to eat and hold Lex, so he put 2 chairs together to act as a makeshift bed upon which Lex could sleep. When Lex woke up, he was in a terrible mood, and Karen was starting to feel worse. We all went back to our cabins, unsure of what the next day would bring. The next day, January 6th, Clark took Karen to see the ship's doctor. He told her she had a bacterial infection and quarantined her for at least 2 days. This meant that she would have to stay in their cabin and that all meals would be brought to her there. We had worried that Lex was getting sick, but luckily he seemed to be just fine. He was even able to entertain himself as we played trivia games that day. Luckily, I had put several episodes of Blaze and the Monster Machines on his iPad for him to watch. That night, the 4 of us went to dinner without Karen. We really missed her and were very worried about her. It was obvious the next day that we were getting closer to Hawaii. We finally started to see blue skies and the temperature was much warmer. Lex was still feeling good, and we invited him and Clark to our cabin for breakfast.
There you go. Big spoonful.
Lex was feeling so good that he even started singing and dancing while Robin napped.
What's that noise? There's something all around. Uh-oh, what's that noise? There's something all around. There's something else. Look, it's gonna look.
Later, we took Lex to what they called the splash pool for height-challenged passengers.
Run around.
Here he comes. Hi, honey. Look at this boy. Walk, walk, walking. He's doing the chicken walk.
Are you tippy-toeing?
Are you doing the tippy-toe chicken walk? Kick, kick, kick. Show Papa how you can kick, kick, kick.
Can you get his glasses?
I can splash too, look.
Very close to the splash pool was one of the ship's hot tubs. We let Lex put his feet into the warm water.
last year.
The exhaust for something is right where the basketball court is.
You're kidding.
That can't be good for you.
Uh-huh.
No, it's not getting bigger.
Oh my goodness, it's delightful out here. Isn't it nice? I love it. You got to go. You're going to have to tell Mama all about you went out to the Capella. Huh? I said, Mama, I went to Capella.
No, it's not getting bigger.
It's perfect size for you.
While Lex was enjoying the hot tub, I decided to go up to the sky tower at the back of the ship. Entry to the sky tower was through this enclosed walkway. Later, the four of us walked up to the very front of the ship. Looking straight forward gave one the feeling that you were flying. A real Titanic kind of experience. On the morning of January 8th, we woke up and walked out on our balcony just as the east coast of the big island of Hawaii was coming into view.
Well, this is our first day in Hilo, so we finally hit Hawaii, and I can't wait to see what Lex is going to think of being in Hawaii. He keeps saying, we're in Hawaii. Not yet, but we're there now, so it's going to be fun. It's our first day, so we've been on the sea for 5 days, and we've had such a good time. Lex has been with us nonstop. Karen got sick, so we want to remember that. She got a bacterial infection and was quarantined to her room for 2 days. So we were kind of on our own and been having a lot of fun with trivia with Clark, so that's been great. And so far, so great.
And we wanted to also remember the plethora of Santa Clauses.
Oh my gosh, I think every Santa Claus that delivered all their toys decided to take a trip on a Hawaiian ship to come to the tropics to cool off after the North Pole, because we must see at least 20 or more men that look like Santa Claus on this ship. So
I got this shot off the internet to show the harbor area of Hilo, our first destination. This is not our ship, but it's in the place we docked. The arrow shows the area of the next picture. It was an outrigger club. Every morning, the various crews take their outriggers out into the ocean. Before breakfast, Lex and the kids came down to our cabin. Karen had been released from quarantine and the sun was out. After breakfast, though, the weather turned cold with rain showers. We had heard that there was a shuttle bus for cruise passengers who want to shop at the local Walmart. Because the weather was bad and because Karen was still weak from her illness, we decided to take this shuttle to Walmart and use that as our time in Hilo. We spent about 3 hours shopping at Walmart, then returned to the ship for lunch. The kids wanted to stay on the ship, so Robin and I hired a taxi to take us from the ship into downtown Hilo for a short visit. Downtown Hilo is very, very small. It has a main street and 3 connecting streets with very old buildings and stores. This is the Pacific Tsunami Museum. It was closed, so we were not able to visit it. Tsunamis have played an important role in recent Hilo history. Hilo was hit twice by tsunamis, one in 1946 and the other in 1960. The 1960 tsunami devastated the entire town of Hilo. As a result of the devastation from these tsunamis, Hilo has built a seawall to help mitigate damage that might be done by tsunamis of the future. The next day, January 9th, we docked at a pier in Honolulu, Hawaii. The sun was out and it seemed that we might get lucky with the weather. This is the Aloha Tower. It was built in the 1920s, and for many years, cruise ships would dock next to it. After breakfast, we took a shuttle to the Enterprise car rental agency near the harbor. I had reserved a small SUV, but when I checked in, the lady offered me a full-size Ford Expedition for the same price. Of course, I accepted. From Honolulu, we drove northeast to the Byodu Inn Japanese Temple. It is located up against a beautiful mountain range at the far end of a cemetery. The weather had gone from blue skies to overcast and gloomy, but the setting was still gorgeous.
Do you see the big fishes?
What
There's
parrots?
a parrot.
Birdies.
Birdies.
That's far enough, mister. You don't want to fall in.
Look at the birdie. Look at the birdie. You want the birdie?
This is a structure that houses a sacred 3-ton bell. People can ring the bell by pulling outward on the rope, then quickly inward to hit the bell.
Let me let other people ready. This way. No, that was good enough. It's other birdies.
Let's let the other
Gotta
people
take
do it.
turns.
And then you can do it again.
The pond surrounding the temple was filled with koi fish. Robin bought some fish food at the gift shop, and Lex and I fed the fish. Later, the kids used the fish food to attract birds who would eat out of their hands. Lex was fascinated.
You need more food.
Yeah.
You put out your hand.
Put out your hand.
Okay, that's it. Now just keep it real still.
Birdie, 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 birdie.
How many birdies?
I want more.
I'm so
Put out.
pretty.
Oh, you want Dada to do it?
Here, birdie, 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 birdie.
Look, that one's standing on top of the other two. Whoa! Fight. Little birdie in my hand.
I knew he'd love this.
Yeah.
You loved this when you were little.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, before we left, Robin had to pose everyone for pictures. We drove out to and across the main street to a little strip mall with a McDonald's for lunch. It was here that Clark and Lex started to feel like they were both coming down with a cold. After lunch, we drove up the coast. As we were driving, Clark and Lex started to feel worse. We decided to stop at the first beach that had easy parking. That was Laniakea Beach. We pulled over to the right just beyond that white van. Robin jumped out and promised to take just a few pictures and then come back. The kids stayed in the expedition. I had just started to walk after Robin when I noticed a police car pull up in front of our car. It was then I realized that we were in a no parking zone. I ran back to the car just as the policeman walked up. The policeman got out his ticket book. Then he said if I moved the car right now, he would excuse me. I thanked him, jumped in the car, and drove further down the street to a place I could turn around. We drove back, picked up Robin, and sped away. We will all never forget Laniakea Beach. The Dole Plantation was on our way back to the ship, so we decided to stop in briefly to look around. After the Dole Plantation, we continued on to Honolulu. The others waited outside the Enterprise office while I dropped off the car upstairs. By that time, Lex was starting to feel better, and he became the Lex we all know and love.
There he goes, there he goes, there he goes. Let's see how you come back. Here he comes. Where's that sweater? Woo!
We got tired.
Tired?
That night, the ship did not leave until 11 o'clock, so we were able to get this video of the Aloha Tower changing colors for the Christmas season. The next day, January 10th, we arrived at Kauai. We took a taxi to the car rental agency and got this Dodge Caravan. We started by driving west and north to Waimea Canyon. The wind was blowing and it was very cold. Clark and Lex were still not feeling well, so the three of us stayed in the car while Robin and Karen ventured out to see the canyon and shoot this video. They quickly came back and we drove back east to Lidgate State Park. It was much warmer there, so all of us walked out to the beach. Even though Lex was sick, he found some driftwood and was a happy camper.
Are you digging? Are you going to make a big hole? John, you like the ocean, honey? Yeah? Are you with Mama?
One stood out.
As usual, Robin gathered everyone for some family pictures, and you would never know that anyone felt sick. That night we sailed to our last destination in Hawaii, the island of Maui. The weather there that day was perfect, warm with blue skies. Maui does not have a harbor, so the ship anchored offshore and used some of its lifeboats to shuttle people to and from the island. Lex really loved the ride into shore, and he seemed like his usual self. When we got off the shuttle, we stopped for this family video.
Yeah?
Okay.
Hello.
Say
We're
hi,
shooting
Mimi.
some video in Maui.
You like being in Maui?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you give a lovey to your dada? Oh, nice.
It was lunchtime, so we walked a couple of blocks to this restaurant, Cheeseburgers in Paradise. Everyone enjoyed the lunch and finally feeling like we were in Hawaii. After lunch, we walked to this Hilo Hattie store. At this point, Lex started to be the most cranky and irritable that he had been on the trip, and we knew that his sickness had caught up with him. He got to a point that Clark and Karen had to cut short their time on Maui and take him back to the ship. Robin and I stayed in town a while longer to look around and do some shopping. We also couldn't resist getting some ice cream at our favorite place, Lappert's. After about an hour, Robin and I got on the next shuttle and returned to the ship. Later that afternoon, we went to the back of the ship and got this panoramic view of Maui. We left Maui that afternoon and started on the cruise back to the mainland. That evening, Lex got sick enough that Karen and Clark decided to take him to the ship's doctor. Luckily, Lex bounced back quickly, and by the next afternoon he was feeling well enough to return to Camp Discovery.
Wow! You did! Oh, it's so pretty! Turn it around so I can get it in the picture. Let me see. Oh, there it is.
The day after that, Lex was able to return to the splash pool where he met a little boy from England. During the night, Robin started to feel sick, so the next morning I had to take her to the doctor. By the end of the cruise, I was the only one of the 5 of us not to get sick. That night, Robin was feeling well enough to join us for dinner. Later, we all went to a dance where Lex and I did our impression of Fred and Ginger. The next day, January 15th, was uneventful. The only memorable thing happened that night when we all went to a trivia game about the musical group Queen. We came in second place, which disappointed Clark, but we had fun anyway. Our last full day at sea was January 16th, and it was also uneventful. The highlight came during one of our many trivia games. For it, we joined Karen and Larry, the couple with whom we had played almost all of the trivia games during the cruise. But unlike the games before it, we were finally able to win this round of trivia. Clark called our team the Lexecutioners. On January 17th, we arrived in Ensenada, Mexico, our last stop before returning to Los Angeles. Here we are again with our trivia buddies Karen and Larry. At this point, we were looking down at some rocks next to where the ship docked that were home to a group of seals. Clark was still not up to walking around much, so he watched Lex while Karen, Robin, and I went into downtown Ensenada. It was pretty much like all the Mexican towns Robin and I had visited. We were surprised to learn that many people from the U.S. come to Ensenada regularly on short 3-day cruises to buy medications that are much cheaper there than in the U.S. Of course, I couldn't resist clowning at least once for the camera. During our walk, we saw these 2 guys weaving bracelets with any name you wanted. Naturally, we had him make one with Lex on it.
There you go. That was good.
This is Ensenada Harbor, and in the distance is one of those 3-day cruise ships about which I spoke earlier. As we left Ensenada, we all felt that we had had a good time on the cruise, but we were also happy to be going home. We arrived back in LA at about 6 o'clock in the morning on January 18th. We again passed the battleship Iowa on the way back to our berth. While we waited to disembark on this last day, Robin and I had breakfast in one of the ship's restaurants. One of the Santas that we had been seeing on the cruise came and sat down behind Robin, so I shot this picture ostensibly of Robin, but really of him. I end this video with a family portrait taken by one of the ship's photographers during the cruise. Our happy but sickly family.